It's been a challenging year to say the least. Brexit, Black Lives Matter, COVID-19, with its devastating effects on everyone, especially the elderly and the Black, Asian and minority ethnic groups. Thankfully, we have recent news of a vaccine that hopefully will not just lift the nation's mood, but the whole world. To make sense of some of these very important topics, we've invited David Ridgway to KLTV. David is a retired politician, a former #1 citizen of Kirklees, and most recently, the author of his exciting new novel called Thursday. Welcome to Public Eye Kirklees. Welcome, David. How are you doing? It's been a while since we saw each other last, and I think since the 23rd of March, you've been one of the most vulnerable groups. How have you been managing?
Well, when I was told to go into the safety mode, I withdrew from my little job where I deliver pharmaceuticals for a local pharmacy to patients, and I went into furlough for 2 months. I went back to work on the 1st of June, and I've stayed in work ever since.
Oh, excellent.
So, yeah, I did the right thing. And whether I'm doing the right thing now or not, I don't know. But yeah, I'm one of the vulnerables. But, you know, we've all get to that age, don't we?
Well, it's great to have you here in KLTV studio. And as I mentioned, the government's been navigating Brexit, Black Lives Matter, COVID, and now there's a vaccine. And I would guesstimate 8 to 10 year recession on the horizon.
Taking the vaccine, it's announced today that it's going to be distributed or start to be distributed before Christmas. But the one they've chosen for this is the one that's got to be stored at minus 70 degrees. Yeah. Are you looking forward to having something at minus 70 degrees pumped into your arm? Interesting.
No, not at all.
Nobody's told me how this is going to happen yet. You'll have arms falling off in the middle of the street.
Well, let's stick with Brexit for now.
Yeah, yeah.
We've got. I'm going to actually go through quite a number of things with you. And the vaccine. We've heard lots of conspiracy theories about it. It hasn't been long enough tested. It's not guaranteed it's going to get you well. 90%, 80%, 85%. How do you feel about it? Are you happy to take it?
You're talking to a guy who has refused to have a vaccine for flu ever since they started until this year. Yeah. I had one for flu and I haven't had flu this year. So does it work? It's worked for me so far. Will I have a COVID vaccine? Yeah, probably, because I think they'll probably have us all dragooned in the streets, lined up, and they'll just go down the line, bang, 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 and there we will. We'll all be done. Is it a good thing? Probably not. Will it work? Probably not. Frankly, I'm a herd immunity man. I think that the greatest strength from combating a virus like COVID-19 is by people having it, recovering, and getting on with their lives. I've known some people who've had it, who've recovered. I've known other people who've had it and died. I've known people who've had flu and died. The actual death rate in the country is not particularly higher than it is in an ordinary year. So there are so many things we can talk about on this. It's very confusing, very confusing.
Yeah. And imagine it's very confusing for someone like yourself who has been a politician and understand the way things work behind closed doors in the town hall and various other places of discourse around the country. However, to hear you say that, I'm quite surprised. I thought you'd be backing vaccines and get it taken and get on with your life.
Make no mistake, Milton, I would never ever advise anybody not to have a vaccine.
Okay.
I think that would be completely irresponsible. There are 3 vaccines which are currently now available, perhaps not available to be actually used today, but they'll be available before Christmas. And I have to say that of the 3, I particularly like the sound of the one that's come out of Oxford University. and AstraZeneca. The Pfizer one, I feel, it was the first to be announced, but it has its drawbacks with its storage and stuff. But none of them are claiming that this is going to resolve. All they're going to do is, all they're claiming is that it will perhaps immunize you for a period of time. The virus will still be there. The virus has always been there.
So, moving on swiftly, Brexit, deal or no deal? To be honest with you, I always felt that Mr. Johnson and the Conservative Party wanted a no deal right from the onset.
It's not in their interest to have a no deal. It is really not in their interest to have a no deal. Quite frankly, I voted to remain. I think that the country lost leave of its senses, and they've taken us down a road which subsequent generations are going to deeply, deeply regret. But we're down the road, and having made the decision, we now have to make the best of it. I do not understand why we cannot have a deal, why there has not been a deal already created. I know all these stories about the EU always leaving it to the last minute so that they can crank up the... But it's not a TV show. It's not a TV show. It's important, and people's lives and businesses and their work and their incomes, they all depend on this.
We watch the news, we read the papers, we try and make sense of it, you know, the general public. But it just goes to show me there's two things here, and the pendulum swings either way for me. One is just how democratic we are.
Well, we are.
In the West, to the point where we're going from analysing everything to paralysing everything. Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, and
analysis to paralysis.
Yeah, and how depoliticised we are as ordinary citizens, and then suddenly, in another 2 to 3 years' time, when it really hits us, these sweeping, huge policy changes that the government would argue, well, we've been informing the local people, you know, the citizens of the country for years and years. We've been informing them. They shouldn't be surprised. But we depoliticised. I say we, the royal we. And then all of a sudden, the country's in uproar because they think that the government in place has absolutely conned them into believing this and believing that. I just feel it could be so much more open. And I do feel our local councillors should be doing more. And dare I say, our local authority in making the whole Brexit agenda much more palatable for the ordinary person on the street. And you were part of that system. You've left it now. But looking back, do you think politicians, local ones, could do more and should do more?
Yes, I do. I've been a believer in devolution for a long time. All governments of all flavours, except there hasn't been a Liberal government for so long, I don't suppose I could include a Liberal government, but nevertheless. But all governments have sucked power into the centre, into Westminster. And doing that, it has been to the detriment of local people. And we're seeing this absolutely playing out now with the current tiers that have been that we've been allowed to go back into, in that you've got
or not come out of,
or not come out of, indeed. You've got some places in the country. You've got Devon in tier 2, where they can't go into the pub unless they're going to have a large Scotch egg for a starter, if you're Mr. Gove, or a real meal if you're... How can we argue about that? But these people in Devon, they don't want to drink with a Scotch egg. They want to drink with a drink. So they go over the border into Cornwall, where they can. And the police are now stopping them crossing the border into Cornwall. I mean, what nonsense is this? The police... I saw a wonderful cartoon of a policeman arriving at the door of an ordinary house on Christmas Day with the big battering ram, bashing down the door, saying, "We've heard that you bought a turkey big enough for 12. And I just feel that's almost where we've got to.
Yeah.
The police are wielding powers which are way, way beyond that which the public expects. And the politicians have driven this. So going back to the front of this question, I do believe very firmly in devolution, but I'm not a big believer in these all-powerful local mayors. Okay. I think to vest that amount of power in individuals is not actually democratic. What I really would like to see is, oddly enough, Osborne's Northern Powerhouse idea, because that would bring local areas like Northumberland, Yorkshire, Lancashire, Cumbria, bring them, and Durham, don't forget Durham, old councils, old counties, bring them all together and create an economic future for those people. Now, those people know what it's like in those areas. They know what the people are like, and they can then work to create the income and the necessary taxation to make that lives better for those people there. The income from the north of England would create a greater economy than that which is in Scotland today.
Yeah, I believe so.
But it would also remove the powerhouse that is Westminster. And to me, that would be a good thing.
The Yorkshire Mayor is going to be one of our features up in the new year. So I will definitely welcome you back to talk about it. We could actually spend a good 10, 15 minutes.
Tell you one good thing about that, Milton. One really good thing. It ain't going to be me.
Oh, well, that's very good, actually. Just one thing with time almost running out for us. Thursday. Yeah. What an interesting book. I find Thursday, although it's a novel and it's fictional, I think it's not inconceivable that it might happen. So could you just tell the public out there, what is Thursday?
Well, before I do that, can I just ask, why have you turned my book into a book form of a coronavirus? With all the novelty bits. Don't answer that.
Let me answer it, because I just want to read about, I want to be specific that when I do sit down and talk to you about the book, I need to pick out things. So, for instance, this is about a flood and the way the government is behaving. You can actually see in your book parallels of how they're handling the pandemic.
Yes.
So it's things like that. So just tell us briefly about the book and what is it about?
The book is about two storms which come across from America. The first storm comes across north of Scotland, north of Iceland, and centres itself over the North Atlantic off Norway. It's a very deep storm. It's in February, and it brings havoc with snow to the north of England and Scotland, and it's now blowing hurricane force winds down the North Sea, southwards down the North Sea. The second storm comes across the Atlantic around about the Azores, then beats up through the English Channel and centres itself over Oxford, and that's blowing hurricane force winds up the Channel. The problem with hurricane force winds over the sea is that it moves the sea. And the sea movement from the wind up the Channel hits the sea movement down the North Sea off Dogger Bank, and that creates a sea surge. And the sea surges, I bet you don't know, but sea surges travel at 200 miles an hour in the mid-ocean. A lot of power, masses of power, a lot of speed. But of course, when they hit land, they don't just disappear. The power hits the land and it rears up and it forces itself over in a big wave. That wave from the sea surge on Dogger Bank, off Dogger Bank, goes over the Zuiderzee in Holland and devastates all of Holland on the coastal side. It then, because the weight of water is all risen in the North Sea, it comes up the River Thames and it inundates London, goes over the top of the Thames barrier. Now the amount of global warming that's been taking place, the mean sea levels have risen. The Thames Barrier is now regarded as being too low to do the job that it was built to do anyway. So the likelihood of water going over the top is not inconceivable. My book is a novel, and therefore it's written about how people react to this sort of stuff rather than it being a scientific treatise, because it's not.
Yeah, and I get that. I love the book in the way it's written, and I'm very interested in the characters. You know, honor, dishonor. You know, the strong individuals become weak, and the weak individuals become strong. This is what I really love about the book so far. I'm halfway through it, so I won't ask you any more about the ending. But I really find
the ending is the tide goes out.
Okay, well, it's almost out with us, according to what I'm hearing on me. It's almost out with us. I do really like the book, and I think it's a good read. It tells you a lot about geography.
Yes.
2, it touches on the environment.
Yes.
And 3, as what you so eloquently put earlier on, it really is about people.
Yes.
And following the characters, and following the characters, I'm really intrigued to see how they react towards by the end of the book. You've also got Marsden in there.
Yes.
You've got some people who names are in there who I know. I mean, what inspired you to write this? And you know, the final question is, and where did you get the characters from?
What inspired me to write it? I was on holiday when I was 7, and I saw the floods in Canvey Island, and that has remained with me all my life. I've lived with a farmer who spent 48 hours of his life reconstructing the sea wall that had been devastated on his land on the River Crouch in Essex. He subsequently committed suicide because of the mental stress that he was under after that. I just feel that the environment is changing so rapidly now that we need to understand that this sort of stuff can and probably will happen. And if it does, at the end of the day, it's little old you and me that's got to cope. Boris ain't going to come down in a boat and say, take my hand. But he's got to put in place the opportunities for somebody else to be in a boat to say, take my hand. And that's his job. And I don't think, quite frankly, hand on heart, I don't think he's done a really bad job over the pandemic. Yeah, I'll poke fun at him. He's there to have fun poked at. But no, I don't think that the Labour Party would have done it any better. I don't think the Liberal Democrats would have done it any better. I think that Nicola Sturgeon is only acting as a little Sirocco to everything else that's going on. I don't think she's doing anything great, because I don't think they can, because they don't know.
That's right.
They don't know. And I think it's unfair for political commentators, of which I am now one, I suppose, to point the finger and lay the blame. But I do think it's fair when they say stupid things to actually laugh at them. And of course, I'm going off for lunch now, and I'm going to have a Scotch egg for my starter.
David, it's always a pleasure meeting you. I first met you in 2013, and
we did.
It's great to see that you haven't retired and just stopped there. You're still being innovative, creative.
I'm halfway through the next one.
I know. Well, I'm not going to ask you about that, or we'll be here till tomorrow night. But thank you so much. Thursday, ladies and gents. Every home should have one.
Thanks for the shout out.
Yeah,
brilliant.
God bless you. Thank you very much. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, see you next time.